Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I am Diego Ochoa. I'm superintendent of the San Mateo-Foster City School District. Got an awesome event for you tonight. We are going to be talking about the most recent and up-to-date information regarding COVID guidance. Everybody out there is interested to know more about the face covering requirement that exists in the state for schools and what's likely to happen down the pike. Um, I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues that I'm going to allow to introduce themselves, starting with.
Good evening, everybody. I am Pam Bartfield. I'm Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
And hello to everyone. My name is Robin Lovell, and I am a math teacher on special assignment.
And a math teacher at heart.
Math teacher at heart.
Always a teacher at heart.
Yes. Before we started this YouTube town hall, we were talking about Pi Day. It's coming up. That's 3.14. That's just a little bit less than a month away, so it's very exciting. And we actually are going to be joined by our local medical expert, Dr. Yosef Torshani. He will be here in just a couple of minutes, and Diego Perez, as always, is here. Diego, if you could just kind of lean in so they can see you. There you go. Diego's here. Diego's taking notes in our YouTube live stream. Belinda Navarro indicated the interpretation is amazing. Thank you so much for acknowledging our wonderful interpreter. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to open up a conversation about COVID. We're going to start with COVID. We're going to let our colleague, our doctor, join us in just a couple of minutes, and then we're going to slink away from the COVID conversation and start to talk about reading and math. And that's where the two of you will come in.
All right.
But you're educators here in the San Mateo-Foster City School District, and we've all gotten so used to these things. On Monday of this week, Governor Newsom and Dr. Mark Galley, the Secretary of the Health and Human Services Department for the state of California, held a press conference. And Dr. Galley said, we don't know exactly when, but we do believe that we are going to change the school mask mandate to a school mask recommendation. So obviously, reporters were very excited about that comment and asked him some follow-up questions, which led him to basically say, we think on February 28th, we'll have enough data to make that change. So Governor Newsom came out later that afternoon and said, his quote was basically, we have been living for the last couple of years in a state of pandemic, and that is going to change, including the mask requirement is going to change. The question is, when? So we held two parent engagement events this week. One on Monday morning, we had, I think it was, Diego, somewhere around 65, 70 parents or so. That was on Monday. It was before they spoke. So they came out with their quotes. They spoke quite a bit Monday afternoon. And so yesterday we had another parent engagement event, and I believe we had more than 115 or so that actually joined us. So it drew up the engagement, and we actually had to extend it another 20 minutes because parents just had a lot to say. So what tonight is about the community hearing one more time what we're doing for mitigation and for responses to COVID. And it's basically an avenue to be able to allow parents to use the chat function in YouTube to interact with us live. And we have our very talented coordinator of communications, Diego Perez, who is going to be taking notes from the YouTube chat and getting us started on all of this work together, getting us started on talking about where this might go. So I'm going to talk for just a couple of minutes about mitigation. In the district, we have been operating a pooled testing program. That's a program where a company comes out and hands out little swabs that look like Q-tips. Kids bring their mask down and uh, 3-4 times in each nostril, and it goes in a container. It goes back to the lab. If anyone in the class has COVID, the test will come back COVID positive. And the very next day, we return with rapid tests and we test every child. So we isolate and find children sooner than most other districts because we're doing this every week. Now, we're not exactly at 100% kids signed up, so we definitely want to encourage more parents to sign their kids up for this program. But that's part of the work, is putting a program out there and letting it build. So we started with only about 3,500 kids signed up, and we're getting close to 8,000 total students and staff signed up for the program. So we're feeling really good about that. We hope in the next couple of weeks we can continue to build those numbers up. The district has also put in place vaccination events. Over 1,700 vaccinations have come through our district for children ages 5 to 11. Now, I'd love to say it was closer to 7,000 or 8,000, but 1,700 is a good starting point. Those efforts have been very important, and we expect them to continue. We expect to reach out and get more events on our campuses at some point here. In addition to that, we routinely check to see if students are feeling ill at school. If they are, we send them home. We give them a rapid test on the way out. We routinely take children to hand sanitize and to wash hands. Then we have these, our masks. And up until last Friday, students and staff wore their face coverings all the time, no matter where they were on campus. And at the outset, I was sort of surprised at how many kids did what we asked them. I thought, this isn't going to go well, but it only took a couple of days for the whole district to figure out how to wear masks. And the governor has changed the mask guidance for situations not involving schools and allowed school districts to implement a more lenient outdoor requirement. So we chose to do that. And we've updated our guidance to say, if you're outdoors, you are able to take your mask off. And I've seen that a little bit. I've been at school campuses the last few days. I've seen a handful of kids. I still see about what looks to me about 90% of the kids still wearing their masks outdoors. I was even just at Laurel Elementary School earlier today after school, and the kids, even after school, playing outside, were using their masks, almost all of them. So I think there's a familiarity that goes along with it, a routine. Pam, you have kids in school. You've been an educator in this district. What comes to mind for you? What do you think about when you start thinking about the idea of possibly taking masks off?
I think that I'm excited about taking masks off. I think it'll be, like we said, I think kids it's comfortable for them to have it on, or like a security. Kids might not be able to express their concerns in the way, so they know, like, hey, everyone around me wearing a mask, so I should wear the mask. But I think just as we got, like you said, in a couple of days, we got kids to have the mask on. I think when they start seeing some of the adults and the other students not having the mask on, I think most students will be able to do that. My hope is, there might be a student that just feels really comfortable with the mask on. I think that might be a case in some instances, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if most students are ready to take their masks off, especially outside.
Yeah.
And I know that's for my children as well.
Yeah. And I think, our doctor just showed up. I think they're prepping him to come and join us here. So he'll join us in just a minute. When I talk to families about this issue, because I do receive quite a few emails on a weekly basis about masks and about COVID, there's two ends of the spectrum. There's families that really thank me and thank the district for the many layers of mitigation we put in place. And they believe those mitigation layers are part of the reason our kids have stayed as healthy as they have. And you have the opposite end who feel like it's past due for us to take these masks off. And both groups basically pull from research. Both groups cite different bodies of research to say why their viewpoint resonates with them. And, you know, as an educator, I have a lifelong commitment to, you know, working with children and supporting their growth and supporting their development. But I'm not a doctor. And none of us are in the medical profession. And one of the great aspects of San Benito County is San Mateo County is a very strong collaboration that we have. As you can see, our guest is joining us here. The strong collaboration that we have among constituent groups and the whole medical community in San Mateo County has been incredible through this process. I'm going to allow our guest to introduce himself. You can speak right into any of these mics, and we're being broadcast live on YouTube.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to come in a few minutes late. Came just from clinic right now, taking care of some of our patients here. My name is Dr. Youssef Tershani. My nickname is Dr. Yo-Yo. I'm a pediatrician. I work for the County of San Mateo, and I'm also the Chief Medical Officer, so oversee all health medical activities in our clinics and the hospital here. And my clinic is actually in Redwood City in the North Fair Oaks.
Yeah. Our coordinator of communications, Diego, is actually taking down the chat notes. So what happens, Doctor, is Diego will put these on sheets and send them down to me. Depending on what kind of question we get, I sort of route it to the person who I feel, you know, can make the best response or give the best perspective. We were just about to get into the question and answer period. I have a question for you while he takes these notes down. What kind of talk is there in the medical community locally about this possible change? You know, the governor and Dr. Galley really created a stir on Monday with their comments, and there's a lot of engagement going on. What are you hearing?
So I think, like everything else that we've done really great in the Bay Area, especially, but even California-wide, is being data-driven and what all our decisions are. We have to remember we're coming up on, it almost gives me goosebumps to think, a month from today will be the 2-year anniversary from the shelter in place, right? Wow. And remembering like how that transformed our lives, and we were the first, you know, part of the country to have that. So we definitely are ones who believe in the mask, right? Like we were the first ones to start shelter in place and the mask mandates. But we also know this isn't permanent. We all knew there's going to need to be an end to the mask at some point, as coronavirus is entering the endemic phase, where it's just part of everything around us, moving from pandemic to just something that's around us, like the flu is always there. So looking at our case rates, looking at the death rates, looking at the positivity rates, and using all those pieces together, just as we've been doing with everything else, we are seeing all the hospitalization rates all plummet. So everywhere else, and that's a late indicator. So there is the positivity rates, when everyone first is testing positive, as we were seeing the end of December, right around New Year's. 2 weeks later, kind of the peaking of people in the hospital. And it's you know, an unfortunate one, but the reality is in 2 weeks after that is the peak of the deaths that occur. And so we are at that stage where the deaths are still on the high end and starting to peak down. Again, they're not anywhere close to what it was last winter, but those with severe comorbidities and those who were unvaccinated, unfortunately, were the ones who are at high risk for that. But all the rates are now plummeting at all the local county systems, and all the indicators are we are on the opposite end of it. In the new submutation, there's a second Omicron submutation some have heard. It's continuing to almost flare itself out. We don't know for sure, but it also spreads quickly, but the level of disease is staying above the neck, to put it in simple terms.
Yeah.
A lot of cold symptoms, but not as much of
not the respiratory,
not
the
the severe
not the
lung
severe.
symptoms, exactly. And so it is entering the phase now, especially looking at the pediatric age group, right? For those who were focused on here, the school age children, it's going to become like all the other viruses. Kids get viruses, they get sick, they need to be out for a day or two. But it is starting to enter that phase, especially with those who are vaccinated. And so that will continue to be something that we'll support. So I think it makes sense. We're going to be starting it today, right? I believe is when keep all the dates together for other places, indoor facilities. These can come off. Part of the communication is going to be each of us is going to have our own comfort zone around that, right? Where no one's going to come through, but hopefully no one comes through and just rips people's masks off. As an individual, you have that right for your own comfort level. But for those who feel they're comfortable and ready, and I'd want to be able to model that for my patients and for my community in places where we can be indoors and remove the mask. I do think we'll be able to do that. Now, am I 100% sure there's not going to be another variant that also is going to be even more contagious and actually cause lung disease? No. But the way it is moving and the way what we know historically from the previous pandemic 100 years ago, the Spanish flu and other ones, we are moving into a phase where it's less and less likely the further we go that we'll need to bring them back right away. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah. I know what your third grade teacher wrote on your report card. He's very talkative in class. He's very pleasant, or what was it? A pleasure to have in class. Do you remember that from report cards? A pleasure to have in class.
I had talkative on mine, surprisingly.
Very talkative. A lot of us were in the talkative category. This is an educational question, so I'm gonna take this one. The question is, why can't teachers broadcast their sessions live while students are quarantining? There are a number of different reasons why that is not possible. One reason is, when we entered this school year, we were given a very strong directive from the state of California to highly prioritize in-person instruction. So the idea of hybrid instruction where children would stay home and receive synchronous or live instruction for long periods throughout the day, we were actually restricted from being able to do that. And they asked us to pivot to independent study with minimal live instruction every day. And it really ended up being more check-in sessions, support sessions. When you're teaching a group of 22 kindergartners, it is not possible to also pay attention to 2 that are at home and do justice to the 2 or to the 22. It is technologically possible, but as an educator, it is not a strategy that ends up with the child getting the lesson from the teacher, because so much of the instruction is dynamic. It's interactive. So when we were hybrid and there were some families who were learning completely from home, then you organized your lesson for that home instruction. Teachers will tell you, I taught 3 classrooms last year. I taught my kids in front of me. I taught my kids who were in front of me and at home, and I taught my kids who were at home. 3 different plans for the same day. That's very intense. And what happens is, throughout that kind of a process, something doesn't make it to the table. Something isn't transferable in this different way. I think with technology, we always want to find out how to tap into the resources we have. This one suggestion is not something we can do, but we're open to other ideas about how to get more support and engagement to students who are quarantining from home. We have a comment about holding events without a mask. This is, sort of a community transmission. Why change that guidance? Why say it is okay to be out in the community and not wearing a mask? What's your sense as a medical doctor about that change?
Maybe I need to clarify the question.
The question is, why is it safe for people outdoors to not wear a mask? Why is that a safe thing?
So the way virus particles circulate in a closed place where there's no circulation at all, not implying this is I can actually get the circulation happening.
This is a former kitchen. There are 4, look at, there are 4 vents.
Oh.
1, 2, I tease the staff. You can see these canned lights up here. They actually turn on and they get hot. So this is where we serve the food in the past.
Oh my God, I never knew that.
So then you have a lot of air circulation.
Oh,
in this
yeah.
room. But let's
This is
imagine
excellent.
a room where you have no circulation, right? We're breathing all each other's air the same.
Yeah.
When you're outdoors, air disperses immediately.
Gotcha.
So using, without giving a physics class of entropy, but naturally all the particles, as soon as they come out, just go everywhere.
Yeah.
And so unless you're directly in someone's face, really close, and potentially coughing or sneezing at them outdoors, it's incredibly low risk that you would be able to have in any transmission happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the second part of the question is the educational part of the question, which is, why can't my child be in class and not wear a mask? And I think where we're getting to, what the governor is bringing up and what Dr. Ghaly is bringing up, and he's the Secretary of Health and Human Services for the state of California, is that is probably going to change. What we're doing here tonight is we're talking about how should we change it and under what circumstances should we change it. So Diego, if you have another page or some more comments to share, we do have a couple of follow-ups to the question that we gave, and one was about lesson plans at home and just listening to the interactions. That, you know, as an educator, it's very challenging for a child to observe something happen and not be a part of it. That sort of taking away a very fundamental aspect of engagement. You know, it's not watching a lesson, it's being in a lesson. So if I had 24 at home, in some ways that is possible because
Right.
I'm having the same interaction with the 24. If I have 10 in person and I tell the 14 to watch from home, it's not the same thing. So it just,
Well, even with materials that they might need, I mean, yeah, I would agree.
we have a series of engagements earlier this week, Dr. Torshani, where had about 200 parents call in to a Zoom meeting. And we had folks on one side of the debate and folks on the other side of the debate. Some really good questions came up, so we've developed a survey that we're planning to send to parents tomorrow or the day after. We're planning to send it to our teachers first and our staff first. And, you know, one of the things they wanted to know is, under what circumstances will it be more safe to take these masks down? Could you talk about the importance of vaccination? We did a whole podcast 2 months ago about this, but I would love for the public to hear you again address, why are these vaccines important?
So I think one way to look at it is, let's actually leave COVID vaccine for a second, go to all the other vaccinations we do for kids, right? We have a certain other schedule of vaccinations that have become mandated for school entry. And why have those historically become mandated? It is because we know the relative benefit, cost benefit for those vaccines really go to the side of helping prevent transmission of diseases that have potentially serious outcomes. We've have 100 years of history of giving these vaccinations and extremely low rates of any untoward side effects. Of course, there are certain individuals who do get medical exemptions from them. And the reason we do that is because kids are our most precious, members of our society. We want to ensure that they prevent the transmission of severe diseases, measles, mumps, rubella, et cetera. And it is through having that we tell the parents we prioritize the safety of all our children by ensuring all our children meet that same standard. And in that same way, we have all the writing on the wall that COVID will become one of those mandated vaccines come next fall. I actually don't know where we're at in the process of the bill. I believe not when it's in the emergency use authorization, but when it's a fully authorized FDA vaccine, sometime period after that is when it will be mandated for everyone to come in. And I fully support that based on what we know about COVID right now. It is a disease that will continue to be around, that can continue to potentially cause severe illness in certain children and in certain adults. We have more and more data being accumulated. We now have something, I think we're on the level of 3 billion doses have been administered worldwide. So to reach 3 billion doses from other viruses, vaccines took decades to get to that level.
Right.
And so when people ask, there's not enough data out there, it hasn't been around long enough, we don't know.
Mhm.
we have such a massive number of people who receive these vaccines
Mhm.
that the safety profile is really strong.
Mhm.
Now, it's not necessarily a population that we here at the school district need to think about as much, but I do want to reply to potentially why the 2.5 to 5-year-old got delayed. Some people have started showing, we got used to that. It comes up to the FDA, goes to the CDC, right away gets approved. So we kind of saw that. The reason the 2.5 to 5-year-old got delayed is they really wanted to make sure all the data really did show that they really needed it. Because what we are seeing, and it's actually a good thing, it's a good problem, so to speak. The 2.5 to 5-year-olds have not had the severe outcomes from COVID that the older kids and especially the adolescents and adults have had, right? As we've seen with coronavirus, the younger you are, unlike a lot of other viruses actually, the less severe the symptoms are. So to really prove that we really need it for 2.5 to 5-year-olds, they really want more data to actually show that. And I think that builds the confidence of the public, builds the confidence of the community, not just like, yep, we're just gonna just rubber stamp every single thing that comes through. We want to actually prove to us that at that age, we really need it. It was proven for the 5 to 11 and the 12 and up. So I think that's an important consideration. And it's the best thing you can do to help mitigate it and prevent not only your child getting sick, but for us to be able to remove these masks. The higher our vaccination rates are, the higher everyone's confidence and comfort will be that we can remove them and safely be together.
Yeah. There's a question that came up. I'm just scanning it right now. I want to talk about this as on the education side and give you a minute to think about the medical side of it. So we have vaccines for 5 through 11-year-olds. Every county in the state is in a different place with vaccinations. We're among the highest. We're always growing. Our district hosted events over 4 days, over 1,700 vaccinated on our campuses. So we're very proud of that, obviously.
That's great.
It could have been more. It could have been 3,500 or 5,500. But the idea that we just got all these folks vaccinated, we just got all these little guys vaccinated, why are we now taking masks off? To me, as an educator, it still speaks to the state's approach to what's going on here. It's, Governor Newsom and Dr. Ghaly said, we're going from a culture of this is a pandemic to this is an endemic. This is something we plan for every year.
Yeah.
And so on the medical side, talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. It's a really great way to phrase it, and I fully support all the way that Dr. Ghaly said it, not just because he's a colleague and friend of mine. We both trained at UCSF in residency, but understanding in general how we are as pediatricians. Parents naturally, biologically, are imprinted to do everything they can to protect their child, right? That's how we've evolved as a species. And so that first time your child falls off the bed, or the first time that they trip and they scrape their elbow, our level of response, the heart rate that goes up, is way more than anyone else who would be around them, right? Objectively, when we see another kid fall.
Or a grandmother.
Or a grandmother, right? And we have to just be aware of that. We have to be aware of our own fears as parents. If I remove my pediatrician training, I would probably have these anxieties and fears about my own child who's at Foster City Elementary, who's in kindergarten there. And I would want to know and feel the reassurance that we can do that. So whenever there's something new that comes up, there's a new animal that comes out of the bush, right? We have that biological primitive instinct to be fearful and protective of our children.
Yeah.
It's really important that we don't shame parents about that and we don't make them feel bad about it, but that we have the data and science to prove that kids actually, and this is where we're starting to move to the other viruses, because children will start catching more colds, right? We need to all be aware of that and be prepared for that. Having this on for 2 years, their immune systems have potentially gotten weaker. We don't have long-term data for this to show, but if children don't have constant exposure to viruses, just like our muscles need constant resistance and movement and normal development needs to happen, their immune systems need to get exposed. They need to actually have the antibodies be created to all the other typical viruses that are out there.
Mhm.
So one of the things that is important that we're starting to communicate is when they do remove the mask, your kid may start actually getting more colds. We should probably still continue the test, and we'll talk. We're going to hear probably more from the state of how often we will and how long that will continue.
Mhm.
But
Oh, I will say 8,000 a week in our district.
wonderful.
That's how many adults and kids are tested in pool testing. When a positive case comes back, rapid antigen testing for everybody in that group. And that's been going on since September.
Wonderful. And that's those are going to be some of the key things. When these come up, we're not going to stop at that day. And I'm not even the school district representative, so I
Yeah.
can't speak for it, but I can't imagine any guidance is going to come that the day masks comes
You
off, that
stop
we're not
testing.
going to stop testing
Yeah.
that day too, right? So we're going to need to keep in certain factors and be really
Mhm.
thoughtful about these things. But going back, anytime there's a new change, anytime there's something that is
Mhm.
different for your child, it will evoke a response of, is this really the right thing? And is this correct? And as long as we have the data behind why we're doing it as leaders,
Mhm.
parents, when they hear that, it can become more reassuring for them. Like any other change, it'll take time for us to adapt to it, and we'll learn from it, and we'll see what comes out of those situations.
That was great. Yeah.
I'm in. I'm
Yeah.
convinced. We're here tonight to talk about COVID. Thank you so much to the 90 parents on the call who
Mhm.
are following along. We're also here to talk about a concept called warm demands. Can I give you my elevator speech on this, Doc?
Mhm.
One of the things that we're able to do as educators that not a lot of other professions are able to do is we're able to project the future for our students that they can't see for themselves.
Mhm.
Our profession is about believing that children can do something that not even they think they can do.
Mhm.
So Dr. Victor Torres out of UC Santa Barbara has been doing some very groundbreaking work over the last 10 years on the concept of educator forecasted futures for children and warm demands. So let me tell you about a cold demand. I played football in high
Not a
school.
cold.
Okay, my football coach brought us out to the field and ran us, on the field. Every run back and forth. That was a cold demand. There was not a lot of warmth. These were in the early 1990s where they would tell the players, I treat all my players the same, like dogs. I'm gonna run you, right? Because the ethic was be hard on them, be strict with them. And we work with little kids, we work with babies, and we want to create a culture in this district where we establish a culture of warm demands. And what a warm demand is saying, it's really, really important for you, doctor, to actually read with your child at home. So I have to have you read with your child at home. I can't have you choose not to read books to your child at home. So let me tell you where that takes us is, do you have Wi-Fi at home? Yeah. What's the name of the Wi-Fi? Do you know? Is that are you in charge of that or someone else in the household?
Xfinity.
Xfinity, great, awesome. And we ask that to make sure that they have, some people will answer and, out of courtesy, like, oh yes, but, we want to ask that follow-up. It's Xfinity, awesome, great. And when you're using the Wi-Fi for work to answer one of your work emails, is your daughter able to actually go on her tablet, and is your wife also able to watch her favorite show at that same time, or do you have to sort of turn things off and on? So then we're finding out what kind of access do you have at home. How's the family doing? Is everybody doing okay? Is there anything I can help you with on just the family side? Health, food, housing? Because now that we've gotten those things discussed, I need to talk to you about reading, because your child needs to read at home. So we've initiated a program called Footsteps of Brilliance, which accomplishes a lot of things for the district. One is it doesn't require any internet access. Once the child downloads the program onto the Chromebook device that we give kids, then That software is basically imprinted into the computer and they can use it at any time without internet. And it actually saves the work. So when they come back to school, like let's say they went home for the weekend, when they come back to school, all their work is uploaded into the system. It just drops it right in. So that's a very important change for this community because it means an economic barrier has been taken away. It doesn't matter if your family has high speed or low speed internet access or no access at all. But we also give hotspots to over 1,500 kids this year. And we have more here. We're ready to deploy more to anyone who needs one. And what the program does is it gives you every single book in the program in English and in Spanish. And I know you're bilingual, our families know that. But imagine how nice it would be to be able to sit with your child while they're reading a book in English and with one touch of a button, see the entire book switch to Spanish. And if you can't read in Spanish, to press another button and it'll read it to you so you know what your child is reading so you can talk to them. So that's the change we're making in this district. We're going from suggesting things and hoping that things happen and wanting things to happen to demanding that things happen.
In a warm way.
In a warm way. Because I'm going to share, you said Foster City, so I'm going to share Foster City's achievement data. We have about 100 kids in kindergarten. 96 of them came to school this year reading at the kindergarten level. 96 out of 100. That's pretty great. We have a school that serves children in a lower income part of town where there are 76 kids and 63 of them came to school not at kindergarten level. Let's change that.
Mhm,
Let's give these families a tool
mhm.
that takes away those barriers, that says your language is no longer a barrier, your income is no longer a barrier. You know, if you go to my house, Doc, I have books everywhere. I don't know what your house is like, but I have a lot of books. Some of our children don't have that. This program puts 1,000 books in their hands. Pam's chomping at the bit. Pam wants to talk to the parents. What is Footsteps of Brilliance? How does the program actually work?
All right. It's a very exciting program. So Footsteps of Brilliance is a early literacy program. It targets preschool through third grade, but actually it's not just for the students in our district. It's or in our school district. So if you have a younger child that's not enrolled in our school district yet, they also have access to it. Parents can create accounts for every child in their home because it's a community-based program. So
Any resident of Foster
San
City
Mateo and Foster
or San
City.
Mateo,
Yeah.
adults, we do have folks in this town and in San Mateo that are learning to read, even adults. So this program is for them as well.
And so what it does is it targets those early learning skills. Like Superintendent Ochoa said, there's books in English and Spanish, there's poems, there's songs, there's games, there's little handwriting. I was at a George Hall school where I used to be the principal and teacher a long time ago. And I went into the class, shout out. I went into a first grade classroom, helped the teacher set it up with their students. The kids played on it. They were writing books. It was very exciting. We talked to them about each app really targets different ages. There's an app that's more for the pre-reader. Actually, our preschool program is going to be part of this as well. We met with Footsteps of Brilliance to set up their accounts. Our after school program, our annex teachers are going to be able to use Footsteps of Brilliance as well for our after school. And so there's a pre-reader, which is more for pre-K early readers. There's a I Can Read, so more for first and second. And then there's kind of the Footsteps of Brilliant app, which has some more specific things for the older students.
Yeah.
While it's a pre-K through third, like I said, anybody can use it in our community. Some of our upper grade teachers, we are really lucky to have a lot of newcomers to the country that move here in fourth grade and above. And so we're setting up Footsteps of Brilliance per teacher to support our newcomer students as they and their family are learning English. Also to read the books and the songs in Spanish. So
When will
yeah.
we start to hold parent events? When can parents come in and learn about Footsteps of Brilliance?
So actually there's not an event this Friday, but this Friday, Diego, who's behind the scenes, myself and a couple of our school principals are meeting with Footsteps of Brilliance to start creating those parent events.
Good.
So we're really excited
You're
about that.
teasing it tonight.
We're teasing it tonight.
We're
We're
not
all-
telling you just yet.
No. We're also going to tease that we are putting together a spring break reading challenge. So we're gonna have some prizes for students. We want students to be using Footsteps of Brilliance over spring break.
Yeah.
You know, the slogan is even just 15 minutes a day. It's not about being on it for hours and hours. We want it's spring break. We want kids outside running around. But 15 minutes a day actually really supports the reading.
You know what I get excited about?
Mm-hmm.
Children in this community are going to be talking to each other about books.
That's a dream.
That's
Mhm.
such a dream scenario to see two rowdy, rambunctious students that run around
Mhm.
and bounce off walls, and then they're talking to each other about the most recent book
Mhm.
that they read.
Yep.
That's very much similar to what we're doing with ST Math. We have a very, very fancy new math program that in some ways it dovetails with Footsteps of Brilliance and how we're going to use it, but it's a very different program.
Mhm.
Robin, you're a math expert. You work with our teachers. You help us with curriculum. You help us with assessments. Talk to the parents about ST Math. What is ST Math?
Sure.
Yeah.
I have a visual to go with it because maybe you've seen it before. Are you familiar with this map?
I'm not.
Got to get
It's a cute
his
little
child signed up.
This is Gigi the penguin.
Little
who
Gigi.
represents ST Math. And it's this, I think it's a fabulous program. It's almost 100% visual and it's entirely conceptual. And it's based on brain science that says when students look at a visual representation of something that could be solved mathematically, they can make sense of it, they can try something, they can make mistakes. And through that process of trying and through the visual feedback that the program gives them that is not based on language, they are able to make connections and build their conceptual understanding of mathematics. And the goal in this is Gigi the penguin shows up and they get a scenario, and the kid's goal is to get Gigi across the screen. So I brought a picture because I think that's
That one's
upside
upside
down. I think that a really important thing for parents and for you to know is that ST Math is not necessarily intuitive. And sometimes as parents, it's really hard because we look at something and we're like, I don't know what my kid is supposed to do here. How can this be mathematics? I don't see any numbers in there, right? And it's super important, I'm showing the wrong side, super important that we let the kids do the sense making. Because once they start clicking, things happen on the screen. I don't know if anybody out there can figure out what this is about, but this is actually one of my favorites that I've watched a lot of kids do. And if a child gets stuck, it might be tempting to try and help them figure out the math. But what I want to really encourage our entire community to do is not help them with the math, but ask them thinking questions, probing questions. Questions like, what do you notice? What do you think is happening here? What would happen if? What do you think you should do, right? And the kind of question that really encourages them to try something, get some feedback and try something else. And that's where the synapses fire, that's where the learning happens. And it really translates into connections that they can make in the math classroom. I've been working with ST Math.
And
for
Robin,
a
don't you
long
think
time.
if a student, you know, one of our standards of mathematical practice is persevering, right?
Mhm.
Persevering and problem solving. And sometimes there might be a situation where your child is frustrated and it's okay to close it and think about it and maybe come back the next day. It doesn't mean it has to get solved in that moment. It's about thinking about it and persevering. I just think
There's a great mathematician named George Polya who said probably 100 some years ago that if a problem takes less than 24 hours to solve, it's not a problem. So yes, but since you brought it up, I just wanted to show this side of the page too. I don't know if you can see, but if a child gets frustrated almost to that point of they can't go on, there's a little button up here. You can't really see it, but there's a little button up here that the kids can click on. They should be learning this in the classroom, and a little cheat sheet will drop down. So in this particular one, the cheat sheet tells them that this problem is about identifying the total number of boxes, and the game teaches addition by combining stacks of boxes. So those little cheat sheets for me or for?
That's for.
Those little, those little
Yeah.
cheat sheets can help get kids past that point of frustration,
Yeah.
because productive struggle is something that we want to see all the time in math,
Mhm.
and this really encourages that.
And I think the parents see that a lot now, because we're going away from just giving kids 50 problems of computation. You know, the old school days where we all thrived because,
No, I don't know
you
if I
know,
thrive.
I was fast at math. You know, a lot of kids who are fast at math, we believed, oh, we're really good at math. What this is all about is this is about sense making.
Mhm.
What does this mean? That's a very deep knowledge that these kids are gaining.
Mhm.
We do have a question for you, Robin. Will ST Math also be available for middle schools?
Absolutely, it's available to all of our students K-8. We're using it in our middle school boost program, and I believe we're using it in our newcomer programs also at middle school. But all kids K-8 across the district have access through Clever.
So when they bring home their computer and they open up the computer, there's actually going to be a little button that says ST Math on their screen.
They'll see Gigi the penguin.
They'll see a little Gigi.
This is what they click on.
They click on Gigi and it takes them into ST Math. So the parents who are watching tonight at home, grab that teenager person of yours and sit down next to them at the kitchen table and say, hey, can you show me what your computer looks like when you open it? You refer to it as Clever. That's what we call the platform where we put all these apps in one place.
Yes. All
So
of our
when you're-
kids know. Yeah.
It's a single sign-on. So when you go to use your computer at home and you're one of our students, instead of having to open 15 websites, all the icons are already on your screen for ease of use and, you know, things of that nature. That's wonderful. That's really great.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And just to kind of pick up on one thing that you mentioned, you know, today, almost all of our children have phones, and any child can pick up a phone and say, hey Siri, how much is 5 times 5? Any phones answering? My phone probably is. But Siri can tell them that, and we really need to support them. Not that it's not important. Fluency is important.
Yeah.
But we want them to know what kinds of questions to ask. We want them to know how to make sense of situations so that they can ask the right questions and even use that technology.
Yeah.
And so what this does is really pushes them beyond the, let me just get an answer, and it really shows them our number system makes sense.
Mhm.
Mathematics do make sense. And we want our kids to learn that in school. And also, you know, this is just one small piece of our program, be able to use that in their conversations and, you know, strategize and do all kinds of interactive work in the classroom as well, but based on a solid conceptual understanding. And that's what this program can offer.
Fantastic. I love it.
That's
You
wonderful.
probably aren't realizing you're preaching to the choir. I actually, my undergraduate degree was in math,
Oh, nice.
and I actually thought about being a mathematician instead of a doctor. So, fully
I'm sure you use your mathematics
Yeah.
every day.
in more of the problem solving.
Yes.
that you get from
Uh-huh.
math is really what I value.
You know, in all of our careers, there's a desire that we have to do the work that we do. There's a curiosity or a passion that we have, but there's also an ethic. None of us would be very good at our jobs if we didn't commit time and energy to build up our craft. You know, in your profession, it's not something you can drop into and drop out of. You're very committed to the work over time. And I want you all to think about something. If there's a second grader that lives in this community right now and goes to Foster City Elementary, and that second grader is really struggling with school, I want you to think about what that child's at-home time might look like. How much time is that child spending reading books at his or her grade level?
Mm.
How much time is that child spending in a program like ST Math that's going to bring out his or her curiosity and uniqueness and passion? And how often does that happen? Every week. And I want you to think about yourselves as professionals and how the commitment you make it's very formulaic. It's like we commit to doing this work and move forward. Um, and you know that that is very connected to the whole idea of making these warm demands, of acknowledging that we have kids who are starting to go through our system of kinder, first, second, and third, and go up through our academic system. And if they're falling behind, these two programs are going to help bridge that gap. At the district level, myself and others here will create a system to regularly review student use of these programs and to connect it to students that we know are behind in their academics so that we can facilitate case management with those families. So if your child were to be behind and we pull reports indicating your child is not using these programs, as a school district, we'll initiate a series of actions that will lead to a warm demand for Dr. Torshani. You'll get a phone call from us that says, I'm calling you because I'm worried about your child. How are you doing at home? What's going on? Take you through that process with the end result being, let's get your daughter on these programs. Let's find out how to up the at-home learning time. And we really believe we're going to have a whole lot of success with that strategy. And like with anything else, only time will tell. We did have a couple of questions loop back regarding vaccines. So I want to honor that they came in even though they were after we finished. One is, will medical exemptions for COVID vaccines be accepted? I think they will. I think that's sort of a standard practice. What's your take as a professional?
Yeah, I can't imagine that would be something different from the other ones. So most of the vaccinations do have medical exemption allowances based on either some of the ingredients that they've had reactions to or previous doses, or based on the individual child's medical conditions. I imagine that will be there, but again, not sure where that will be.
Yeah, I think we're headed down that path where we're gonna accept those exemptions, but we need to get that guidance from the state, and I have every confidence that it will be as well. Another question, it is a bit of a follow-up. So can you comment on why unmasking indoors is even considered an option before everyone is eligible for a vaccine?
Yeah. I think the key thing, going back to what is the idea of why masking started and what is kind of the normative level of circulation of virus or contagion in general. We put on the masks and we kept them on because we were in a pandemic where literally thousands of people were dying every single day. In our country, I still think we are at the thousands level. I haven't looked at it this past week, but I believe we still are. As I was saying, we're at that 4-week mark after the peak, so we actually do expect the deaths to be on the higher end. We haven't seen those numbers happen in the 0 to 4-year-olds. We haven't seen anything like that. And if anything, or even with the pandemic, with the tens of millions who got infected, the number of kids who died of influenza in previous years is almost at the same level of who died of COVID. And that was just our normal everyday lives. We didn't make everyone wear a mask because of the 0.001% of children who will die who have medical conditions. We're not going to wait until every single virus isn't circulating. And again, going back to, I want to honor the protectiveness that every parent has, that they want to protect their child. And I don't think we're going to mandate that every child we're going to rip their masks off. Right? We're going to let choice be there, but we want to have allowance for those who do feel comfortable and who themselves know that they're vaccinated and that their risk levels are low. But we do need to remember, as educators, you guys would be able to know this even more than I do, it does create a barrier in learning and interaction for a child to have the mask on at all times. Like we definitely have shown that. And yes, over time they adapt to it. Like as brilliant as kids are and their amazing ability to adapt to speak, but there is some things being lost. There are some subtleties in communication and in interactions, and so we have to realize there are cons to it. And when transmission is low in the community, and especially in an age group where we have vaccination that goes high, I fully support when we will have those mandates to be able to unmask my own child. I will allow her to be unmasked in school when they're ready, based on our own risk factors. And we do have an under 5-year-old at home And even though he's under 5, I still think knowing what I know about the transmission rate, again, if things change, we have another variant, we need to come back. This isn't a hard and fast rule. Nothing in the pandemic has ever
Right.
been
Right.
that I will never change my opinion in a week
Right.
from now, based on what we know now.
Yeah. We did get a follow-up question regarding the academic portion of our meeting. It was, can you comment on those who are committed to doing the work, this warm demands work? And if one of those individuals is met or more are met with racism in the workplace, and it takes away from kids. And as an educator, our goal and our task is to always create a culture where people are respected and where people are free of harassment and free of racist conduct and things of that nature. When we have instances like that, we actually engage in a process to bring people to the table, interview, follow through with additional steps that ensure that the conduct is really brought to the attention of those who may have committed it, and to be able to rectify and have some resolution regarding that work. What's being done in advance of any further instances of that nature is we are working as a school district to develop a strategic plan, and cultural competence and staffing equity are two of our sub goals in our strategic plan. Over the next 60 days, we will bring folks together here at the district office to develop actions and strategies to achieve the goal of having a workplace where people of all languages and races and cultures and sexual orientations are free from harassment and are thriving in our system. So I wanted to address that. It's a hard question to talk about live. It's certainly a hard question to talk about on YouTube. I wanted to honor the person who submitted the question and be able to just to be able to discuss it, to be upfront about it. You all have been amazing. We have a Spanish language YouTube town hall coming up. I want to thank all of our parents for being in this event. We're still hanging in there with 61 live, and just really really honor the work that my staff is doing. The staff and teachers in the San Mateo-Foster City School District are the absolute best, and I want to thank all of our parents for being partners with us this year, and look forward to seeing you all very soon. And thank you very much.